Hello, everybody. I'm Mike,
And I'm Maria.
and this is TalkAlley.
Hello.
Hello, I'm welcoming everyone, listeners and viewers, on this TalkAlley episode 63, part 2 of our series after Halalan
Helen,
2022.
this is a part two of After Halalan 2022. Of course, we know that Halalan 2022 was a very exciting and colorful elections, right? Very colorful. In fact, um, particular organizations or parties have their own color and we're identified through that color.
Mhm.
So yes, this is continuation of that fever, and we are going to talk to you about it with a few with our special guests
Yes,
today.
but everything in order. Good afternoon, Germany, to the listeners and viewers. What happened just today or just yesterday? We have again Champions League winner is Real
Again?
Madrid,
Yeah.
8th time in a row.
Ooh.
So
8 times, like
yes,
really?
yeah, I just
Give
had
others a chance. Boo.
yes, that's
I'm
what I
just
wanted to
kidding.
say as well.
For the Real Madrid fans, of course, congratulations. But yeah, it's been 80 years, man.
Yes, congratulations to Real Madrid. The weather here in Germany is for summertime quite chilly, but the temperatures are rising. So
Yeah.
brace
I
for
swear to
summertime,
God.
heat waves and everything.
Yes, it has been a challenge.
Mhm.
Going out every day. I think I got burned yesterday when we went out, but it's okay. Everything's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's summer, and there's so many things to be looking forward for, like the €9 ticket. I know everyone has gotten one,
Correct.
especially most of the Filipinos I know, they've been posting their tickets online. So I know that you got the ticket, and it's gonna be. How do you see this? Is it going to be like in other third world countries where people are like pushing each other inside the train?
Well, you may
How
like
many
a
tickets did they sell? I mean, really?
like a Japanese scenario where they have to push the
Push?
people.
I know, right?
Well, of course, they have to deploy more public transportations.
Exactly.
Like they have to ride more
yeah,
frequently.
because it's crazy, really.
And-
So many people took the ticket, and to add to it, the schools also implemented them, right?
Correct, yeah.
They
So
implemented it to school, so the kids now have the €9 ticket as well.
Yes.
So
they
kind of
were
crazy.
proactive and they converted the normal school ticket into the €9 ticket, yeah, which is good. We don't have to bother to cancel it.
Yes, but it's gonna be really wow. I'm anticipating huge crowd because it really helps a lot. The inflation is really bad right now, and we're struggling with the price increases everywhere. And price increase. I mean, job. What do you call this? Salary increase would be beneficial, but most of the companies are also struggling. So it's like a push and pull thing. We have to just operate with the government.
Yes.
Everything will be settled in 3 months, right? Because this implementation is until June, July, and August. Only,
Yes, 3
right?
months, yeah.
Yeah, 3 months. So yeah, get your €9 ticket now and ride the trains. Don't ride your cars. Save energy, right? Help save the world against climate change, and of course, save your money because of the oil increase. And this implementation is just for 3 months. And which trains are they allowed to go on?
Well, you have the regional trains, the regional express, the S-Bahn, yeah, the fast trains, and then the subways. But you're not allowed to travel with these tickets in the bullet train, the intercity express, and the intercity.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so it's limited to those two
OMG.
modes of transportation.
I have tried traveling with the regional, right? Regional trains.
RE, yeah,
The
RE and
RE
RB.
is you have to be very patient and carry less. So you're gonna run after these trains, and no reservations. First come first serve basis, and yeah, well, if you are planning to travel for long trips. Okay, so there you go. And now, Mike, Mike,
Yes.
are you excited?
Yes, I'm very excited for
well,
our guest.
I'm going to introduce our first guest. Our first guest is a registered OISC Level 2 immigration law practitioner in the UK.
Mhm.
He holds an MBA from Oxford Brookes University. He offers financial as well as immigration services. He was previously a reporter for ABS-CBN's The Filipino Channel.
Mhm.
His international television program, One EU Connect, won Best Television Show regular in the 2014 Migration Advocacy and Media Awards. Welcome to TalkAlley, Jean Alcantara. But is he there already?
He's not in yet.
Jean is currently driving, so he said he's gonna be late for about 10 minutes. But we welcome you, Jean, to TalkAlley. If you're listening right now, hello.
Yes, be safe and tune in when you are there.
Okay, but Mike, our next guest, an alumni of the University of the Philippines, Cebu, also a full professor of history and sociology at the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, and visiting professor at the CRIDIS, University Catholic de Louvain, in Louvain-la-Neuve, Belgium.
Mhm.
Welcome to TalkAlley, Professor PV Zoe Maria U. Sanchez. Professor Sanchez, hello.
Hello,
Welcome to
Professor
TalkAlley.
Sanchez.
Hello, good afternoon, Mike and Maria. And I would like to greet also the professors of CRIDIS, the Université Catholique de Louvain-la-Neuve. I'm here at the office.
Oh, okay, thank you for your time, Professor.
Yes, thank you for your time, Professor.
Now, Mike.
Yes, no, Maria, are you excited for our next guest?
Yes.
I'm sure you are. And
since last week.
Since last week, yes. Today, ladies and gentlemen, before we introduce our next guest, let's watch this.
Let's watch it.
Tamang value sa mga kabataan. Dapat tinuturo sa school na masama ang extrajudicial killing, masama ang red tagging, masama si Marcos, marami siyang human rights violation.
I disagree.
Nung panahon...
Okay.
It's still my time. It's still my time. It's still my time. It's still my time.
You should not use this.
It's still my time. It's still my time. It's still my time.
We'll
go back
It's
to
still my
Attorney
time.
Espiritu first to finish his 20
It's still my time.
seconds.
It's still my time. Don't be rude.
Thank you. Attorney Espiritu, you have your 20 seconds left before you were interrupted.
Dapat tinuturuan natin ang kabataan na respetuhin ang buhay, ang human rights, respetuhin ang buhay ng lahat at hindi dapat pumapatay ang ating mga gobyerno. At hindi nagnanakaw ang ating gobyerno. Diyan tayo magkakaroon ng mga mabuting henerasyon ng kabataan.
Yes. Attorney Gadon, your 45 seconds is over. We have 30 seconds for Attorney Espiritu's rebuttal.
Binuksan mo ang usapan, wag mo akong pagbawalan. I go by the record, Amnesty International, 3,257 ang pinatay nung panahon ni Marcos. 35,000 ang mga... It's my time, wag kang bastos. It's my time. 35,000. 35,000 ang tinorture. 70,000 ang kinulong. It's a matter of record.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike.
Yes, our guest is a lawyer, labor organizer, and activist for human rights, climate justice, and gender equality. He is the former national president, spokesperson, and current labor organizer of the Bukluran ng Manggagawang Pilipino, as well as the former national president of the Solidarity of Unions in the Philippines for Empowerment and Reforms Federation. As a lawyer, he specialized in public interest cases, including plunder cases against President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, cases representing rebel soldiers charged with mutiny against the Arroyo administration, a Supreme Court petition to protect freedom of speech, as well as cases against former First Lady Imelda Marcos, wife to the late ousted dictator Ferdinand Marcos involving her family's ill-gotten wealth. He also handled cases to obtain a writ of kalikasan to stop the privatization of water resources in Indang, Cavite, and represented clients from the labor and urban poor sectors free of charge. He also served as legal counsel and board of trustee member for the Freedom from Debt Coalition to oppose high electricity rates.
He ran his first Senate race as a socialist and anti-capitalist candidate. He is campaigning on establishing a national minimum wage of at least 750 pesos per day, the abolition of regional wage boards using price control to curb rising prices, halting the collection of excise tax on fuel under tax reform for acceleration, inclusion law, and value-added tax, and removal of 12% value-added train on the fuel. I just want to say it, that's what you missed. So he also supports prohibiting contractualization or ending the endo system, ensuring a living wage for all workers, decriminalizing abortion, passing the SOGI Equality Bill, and a wealth tax allowing the same-sex marriage, and repealing the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2022 would have been very beneficial to a lot of Filipinos. He also opposes the death penalty, lowering the corporate income tax, and adopting a federalist system of government. Good afternoon, Europe, and good evening, Philippines. Welcome to TalkAlley, Attorney Luke Espirito. Finally.
Yes, good evening, Mike and Maria. And I really apologize for last week. I don't want to give any explanation because it's quite an embarrassing explanation. I got caught up in the rain and I don't want to elaborate on it. And also, good evening, Professor Sanchez. Yes, I'm glad to be here finally.
Magandang gabi
For
po.
1 week.
Yes, thank you so much for being with us, Attorney Luke, and we have been very excited. Of course, we understood your situation last time. It was, an act of God, as they say it.
You know how it is in the Philippines, right?
Of course,
You have something like that and everything gets
we understand.
disrupted. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you
but
very
you made
much.
it up. He's here today. Thank you very much.
Oh, we're just very excited. I'm
Yes.
actually lost for words. I've been following you during the campaign, so yeah, well. So it has been more than 20 days after Halalan 2022, Mike, and our guests have been the heart of it all. We want to know their struggles, their truth, and their expectations. But before
Before we answer,
they answer
before they answer
her questions.
these questions, Maria, this episode is of course brought to you by amazing pure organic barley, which provides you with stamina and vigor to survive long hours of work and play. For inquiries, please contact Miss Jess Esquilio. You may also email her at jess@esquilio.de for more information.
I am Maritoni Fernandez, and we are in the middle of a barley field here in Swan Hill, Australia.
Well, we think we have the best barley in the world because of our clean irrigation water. Water comes from the Murray River, which is a freshwater river. All our drinking water comes from the Murray River too. So it's full of nutrients, and also the climate is perfect for growing winter cereals. Clean, green, certified organic.
Yeah, we're certified with NASA, which is one of the Australian certifications for organic. IAM Worldwide gets its barley grass powders from Herbal, which sources them from us at Nutrigreen, so you're guaranteed the best barley grass powders in the world.
I am truly proud to say that we are now the sole distributor in the Philippines for Nutrigreen barley.
Amazing pure organic barley provides you with stamina and vigor to survive long hours of work and play. For inquiries, please contact Miss Jess Esquilio. Contact her via email at jess@esquilio.de for more information. Maria.
And we are also live on Kumo, so follow us. Anyway, we have seen millions of volunteers all over the world, right? With their colors, including the pink pink, pinks
Yes.
all over the world, and red and blues and whatever. And that's how they call it. I'm sorry. Attorney Luke, how do you feel now that the election is over? That the COMELEC has and the sitting National Board of Canvassers has proclaimed the 12 winning senators, including the president and the vice president. How do you feel?
I feel that I still want to be in the fight. I think that if the elections are over, then we're just going to have to shift to another type of struggle. And that should be the political struggle. That's why even after the elections, I never rested. It's still as if I'm campaigning, but this time for a different thing, not for myself to get elected, but in order to build a resistance movement against this evil regime of Marcos and Duterte. I think we should, make a stand right now, and there's no time for us to, just rest and have a vacation. I think more than ever, it is important for us to struggle and still organize and still explain to our countrymen the kind of society that we want to build. And that should not be the society that, this evil tandem of Marcos and Duterte represent, which is an inhuman and undemocratic type of a society. So the fight still goes on for me.
Okay.
Okay. There we have Jean waiting in the lobby.
Jean.
So
we are joined by Jean from UK as well.
yes.
Jean, hello, welcome. Are you still driving?
No, I've just parked. Pasensya na po.
You just parked. Okay.
Greetings from
Take your
the UK.
time, and of course, we want to have you later on in the show. It just, yeah. So we've just asked Attorney Luke Espiritu how he felt, and our next question is: do you feel that this was a fair election, Attorney Luke?
No, not at all. I think that the Marcos Duterte tandem has made use of all tricks in the trade in order to subvert our democracy. These are pre-existing practices already. The use of political machinery, political dynasties at the local level, down to the ordinary barangay or sitio, the small formation in our political subdivisions. They made use of the political machineries of our traditional politicians, use of massive vote buying, and that is in order that subverts our democracy because it does not actually respect the free choice of the voters. It manufactures consent. If you buy votes and you make use of political dynasties, do you think that will result in free elections? That type of a choice would be manufactured choice. That would be choice based on other considerations rather than your free, informed, and intelligent consent to this type of regime that has already taken power over our land. So it is a subversion of our democracy, and I don't think that the Marcos Duterte tandem has gained power through democratic processes. Quite the contrary, they have gained power through the subversion of our democratic processes.
I understand. Professor Phoebe, it's 2022. What do you think of this? Your thoughts?
Well, as a sociologist, I go back to the field and I tell you, before I left to Europe, I was chairing Karapatan National Alliance for Human Rights in Central Visayas. And the massive killings, the no-knock raids for 4 years, and later on punctuated by the medical pandemic, was really something like a perfect storm, a storm for a perfect dystopian gulag. It's what the Filipino society felt. And then on the day of elections, you are confronted by the payers, the Cabo Pagador in the field, assisted by the PNP or assisted by the CAFGU, the Civilian Armed Force Geographical Unit, with the same, composite of the military, the PNP, the paramilitary groups who do the no-knock raids. You're confronted by them and they have money. The first thing you will ask, will the opposition help me solve my poverty today? Will the opposition, if I vote for them, will they help my life who is under threat today? Of course, they would say, I'll just take the bait. and to hell if somebody sits there or not. That's the point, that the poorest of the poor are confronted, and we're talking about, no, you are talking about 60 million people who are in the lowest in the ranks of the society. I'm not just talking about the urban poor community or the rural poor community. It's really what confronts Philippine society. That's anomie. There was this constant threat. There was massive poverty, your excise taxes on top of the VAT, the value added tax, and the expanded value added tax. And we're talking about the neoliberal policies where you have the suspension of public subsidies. There was also the freeze of wages were, there was wage freeze. We're pushing for 750 pesos. And of course, Bayan, not just Bayan in Europe, I chair Bayan Europe, but all the Bayan have been pushing for the highest of demands in the economic field. But that's what we always face. We are confronted by red tagging, and the opposition is even included, not just Bayan, it's all of the opposition. They have already combined everything, that those who oppose the Marcos Duterte tandem are automatically communists. And so that's what we gain for that. And that is the threat to our life. And then, of course, if you speak for the people who are not aligned in any way and they are just waiting and looking at who they will follow, they will surely get the bait. And that's about 500 pesos, 1,000 pesos. That's big enough. 100 is big enough when you're poor. And much more when the local government unit, the local government officials, a lot of them have been, legworked. They were groundworked. And then these people who are in the military and in the ranks of the other party, according to the 22 communities that we pick up. I come from Cebu province, and I have a field research of samples of 22 communities. And the 22 communities in the pattern, 17 of the 22 gave me data that the LGUs were actually offered something like 2.5 million to get the perfect, for the administration party. And
okay,
what will you feel?
Professor Phoebe, yes. So Jean, Professor Phoebe, and Attorney Luke mentioned about the laylayans, the masses, and our history of corruption in politics, especially during elections. This is, as I've mentioned to Professor Phoebe, it's 2022, and this is quite ironic. I just want to ask first, who won in UK? I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
You're still on mute.
You're still on mute. Yeah. For president. You're on.
Okay.
Yeah,
No.
okay.
So obviously it's also Marcos who won in the UK.
So I have a follow-up question. You see, Attorney Luke and Professor Zoe mentioned most of the affected voters were from the laylayan because they were offered, How is it different in the UK? Because I know you have millions of voters there, and they're mostly like 80% professionals. How did he win in UK?
Well, this is an interesting question because we actually did an analysis. I did an analysis of the results in the UK of the election returns. There were 17 precincts. I'm excluding one, no, because apat lang yung botante doon. But in the other 16, there were 2,000 voters each. And in each case, Marcos won about, 67% of the vote. And that's almost standard per precinct. So, okay, he won, but how did he win with a constant ratio across tens of thousands of Pinoys all over the UK? So it's a question that I've raised and I've sent it to various people, and nobody's been able to come up with an explanation except that it's a big number from statistics.
In connection with that,
Yes, so on election day, some vote counting machines malfunctioned, and there were reports of voters waiting in line for hours while the devices were repaired. On the eve of election day, partial and unofficial voting had hit more than 60% of the total votes cast. So there have been claims of election fraud in 2022. According to a report, outgoing President Rodrigo Roa Duterte has requested that the COMELEC examine the malfunctioning VCMs used during the election. Your thoughts on this,
Attorney Luke, yeah, do you have actions on this? Are you going to file cases just like what current President Bongbong Marcos did when he failed to win in the past election against VP Robredo? Is
You know,
it the same?
the way I see it is that there could be fraudulent results can only be effectively affected if there is an objective condition on the ground that there is support for Marcos. Because it's so, you cannot do fraud, you cannot commit fraud if it is so impossible also that there is no real and actual support for Marcos. So, on the ground, we could also perceive that kind of a support for Bongbong Marcos among the masses. But this does not discount the fraud, okay? If at all, this can only like embolden the fraud. Because we have also received reports about vote buying, massive vote buying. Can you imagine? There are areas wherein they bought votes for up to 14,000 pesos per individual, even up to 20,000 pesos per individual. But they could only commit such scale of vote buying if there is enough basis also that Bongbong Marcos has support. Otherwise, it would be too obvious. And on the ground, we could also monitor that a lot of people supported him. But that does not mean that the result would be democratic, because we must understand that before the elections, there were years already wherein Marcos has peddled falsehoods and deceit through the use of troll farms, using billions of pesos, peddling lies, and revising our history. So if you have that combined with actual fraud prior to and during the elections, then you have that result, 31 million votes on paper that were given to Bongbong Marcos. What I'm saying is it's a combination of actual support, but manufactured support. That's what I will say. The support or the consent that Marcos has generated through a combination of a lot of tactics, vote buying, false news, false claims, troll farms, billions of pesos being funneled or distributed in this campaign, it has resulted in manufactured consent. And for me, that is not democratic, because true democracy is based on free and intelligent consent. If you use deceit, then that is undemocratic. Even in our civil laws, when you, for example, as ordinary a thing as marrying a person, you must not use fraud, because if you use fraud, that can even be a ground for invalidating the marriage. That could be the marriage could be annulled because you used fraud. How much more? How much more if you use fraud in an election? Using fake news and false claims, using troll farms, and spending billions of pesos to revise history. Then combined with that would be the actual vote buying. So, that's a big danger that we have, because our ruling class right now, as represented by Bongbong Marcos, can actually manufacture consent. So what does that mean? That means in the decades ahead, since our ruling class can manufacture consent, they could stay in power indefinitely and fool the Filipino people forever. And, use political power as a means to plunder our country. And that's the danger we are facing. So I'm not saying that all of this is just a result of manipulation of the numbers. But we have to understand that fraud is not limited in such a manner. Fraud has been committed years before, years before by spending money in false news and false claims.
So, yes, thank you, attorney. So, what attorney Luke is saying, that's been a culture in the Philippines already. It's been part of the Filipino culture, but it doesn't mean it's right. So, your question,
Yes.
Mike?
Has your party officially conceded to the finality of the results, Attorney Luke?
No. In fact, we are very clear. There is no honeymoon period for Bongbong Marcos. We do not recognize the legitimacy of this regime by the mere fact that he has gotten those votes by swindling the Filipino people. And we will go on and reject this regime and challenge this regime. And in fact, we have to build the resistance movement against Marcos. There will be no respite for Bongbong Marcos for us.
Okay, so attorney Luke also mentioned about fake news earlier, which has been the machinery, as they say, of most of the politicians in this election. So what went wrong? Mike, in Europe, specifically Germany, there was a case when an American dropped the word, can I say it, Nazi, during a spat in Frankfurt Airport, which is just close to us. Police say it was directed at them, and they sued her for slander. But in a country with freedom of speech, how can this be illegal?
Yeah, Maria, as Heinrich emphasizes, Germany has outlawed the glorification of Nazism, but no law forbids calling someone a Nazi. So,
Okay.
yeah, you hear that grammar Nazi, for example.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
what is illegal is what German law refers to as hurting someone's honor. In this sense, meaning somebody's worth or hurting someone's reputation through verbal abuse. Violating this principle constitutes slander. So, given the millions of lives lost under the Nazi regime, either through systematic extermination or war, not to mention other unspeakable horrors committed in the name of Adolf Hitler, comparisons to the Third Reich are simply no ordinary insults. So, we remember, and in the Philippines, what went wrong there?
What went wrong, Jean, in the Philippines? What can you say about this?
Well, I think obviously President Duterte set the tone. And, it's just, I think all the things that he did, the killings, the threatening of people, the restriction on freedoms. I mean, look at Laila de Lima, still in prison now. So I think he built such a climate of fear. Now, I think I was talking to some people here, and they said it's like the Stockholm syndrome, where the people who are actually victimizing you become even your idols. It's hard to understand, but there is something in that, diba?
Yes.
So in the UK, there is just so much frustration, disappointment. Even last night, I was talking to someone who's practically in tears because he's a scholar in the UK, and he is finishing his PhD, and now he doesn't even want to go home because he said he would become a thorn in the administration side and could probably threaten his own life. So I think it started with Duterte, and then the constant, the corruption, and just the repression of freedoms, including the press, and of course now the propagation of fake news, etc. All these added up to make the Philippines really, I don't know, I don't recognize it anymore. The main media are practically helpless. They still continue to publish, but I'm not sure who reads them anymore.
Yes. Thank you, Jean. Professor Phoebe, you're an educator and academic. Does this got something with the way we educated our youth? I mean, did we miss something out there?
The repressive state apparatus, that is your communications office, the propaganda that the government is using, has manufactured consent from the people, and it is being supported by your supposedly ideological state apparatus, and that is the Commission on Higher Education. If you look at Popoy de Vera, he is at the side of Duterte. And then what did he do during the elections? The red tagging was rampant in the University of the Philippines, where I come from. And in fact, what happened to the DND, UP-DND Accord? So if you speak of the elections and the 1,800 faulty machines, you go back to the time when Marcos was ousted. It was because the fraudulent election in 1986 was that the time a Comelec was short of a rigorous mechanism to count a massive turnout of votes, as preponderant as 31 million votes from a mechanized system. It was just easy with your automated election machine to enter the lanzaderas, or the vote switching machine, to enter the vote padding and vote shaving system, because it's already statistical. So, when you speak of the whole thing, plus the whole apparatus, your ideological state apparatus, the repressive state apparatus, as what Attorney Luke said, it's a combo of all these things, and they tangoed, and there is social consent because of the pressure manufactured by your political system.
Mhm. Thank you, Professor. So we had a guest. Now the effect. We had a guest, Lian Porquia, who is also a youth representative, and whose father was one of the victims of extrajudicial killings in the country. What do you think of these killings, and why are they happening, even in broad daylight, Attorney Luke Espiritu?
It's a function of elite rule. If you have the rule of elites, then it goes to the point of eliminating enemies of the state, because elite rule is inherently undemocratic. You could have formal democracy under elite rule, but the very essence of elite rule is really undemocratic. It is the rule of a few who are the economic managers also of the country, who own the property, who are property owners, who own the wealth. And if you have elite rule, then that's inherently undemocratic. It could, try to pretend to be democratic through formal democracy. But at the end of the day, elite rule really tries to silence opposition to the point of killing. Like extrajudicial killings, these are not inventions only of Duterte. This has happened in every type of administration prior to Duterte. The only problem is, and the only difference is, Duterte does not even pretend to be democratic at all. He is very, very open that he is okay with extrajudicial killings. That's the only difference. And the scale also of the killings would be, it would be more severe under Duterte. But elite rule itself will really generate suppression. It will generate repression. It will generate killings. Just check in other regimes prior to Duterte, how many were killed, how many lawyers, how many journalists, how many were tagged as communist. Red tagging is not an invention. It's just Duterte has raised it to a higher level. So that's what you get when the system itself is being controlled by the elites in government. Now, of course, we do not like the severity of Duterte. And in fact, we do not like the prospects under Marcos. Marcos is simply someone who will continue the type of elite rule, the most open to extrajudicial killings, and the most, rabidly anti-democratic. Of course, we don't like that. But in order for us to really solve the problem of extrajudicial killings, and in order for us to really usher in true democracy, then we have to answer the question as to whether we accept elite rule in general in our country, or we have to really change our political and economic system.
Okay.
These killings are happening in broad daylight. What has been done to stop this?
Attorney Luke.
Attorney Luke.
Nothing has been done to stop this under Duterte, and I think it will be more alarming under Bongbong Marcos Jr. Because the NTF-ELCAC, all these institutions of repression and killings, they are already becoming more bold under Bongbong Marcos. Like the red tagging is becoming more serious under Bongbong Marcos. Like you could see how they spread propaganda and try to, as I said, manufacture consent among the masses that if you go against the government, you're already a communist, a terrorist, and it's becoming more serious now, graver under Bongbong Marcos. So nothing is being done in order to stop it. If you talk about the government, in fact, our government is trying to escalate with the NTF-ELCAC becoming bolder, the police and the military becoming bolder, and the violation and the attacks on our democratic rights becoming more blatant under Bongbong Marcos.
Okay. Are this one of your concerns, Attorney Luke, as well? Are this
Yes,
one
of
of your
course.
challenges?
Yes, I am a labor leader. And being a labor leader for several years, we know that workers are almost forced, they are forced to assert their rights because the government will never take care of their interest. So what would a worker who is impoverished and who is not even considered a regular worker in the workplace, workers here are precarious. So what will they do? They will be forced to organize. They will be forced to assert their rights. And if you are under this regime, which calls people, everyone, no matter what sector you belong to, if you fight for your rights, you are immediately tagged as a terrorist. We have an anti-terror law. It was even approved by the Supreme Court as being constitutional. And we have the institutions like the NTF-ELCAC, which tags people who fight for their rights as communists and terrorists. So what will happen if the workers are forced to assert their rights, organize and fight? Then they will be tagged as terrorists. They will be tagged as CPP and PANDF. And the state will no longer talk about their problems. The state will consider them as state enemies, and so on and so forth. It's not just about workers. How about our urban poor who are already oppressed? What if a land developer wants to grab their land, and throw them off their communities? Then they are forced again to fight for their rights. So what will happen if we have these institutions like the NTF-ELCAC? We have laws like the anti-terror law. We have red tagging. So what will happen is these, urban poor leaders who are merely fighting for the rights of our impoverished poor, they will be tagged as terrorists. And, after the red tagging, the executions, extrajudicial killings, they follow. So, and so on and so forth. What about our farmers? What about our indigenous peoples? And what about our youth? So if we have this kind of a regime which, goes into witch hunting, calling everyone who, assert the rights as communists and terrorists, if we have that, then it really bodes ill for for our exercise of our democratic rights, and it will affect all of us. And I am a labor leader, and I have been red tagged also. And what will follow red tagging? I am even thinking that I am even under the risk of being killed someday because I'm just fighting for workers' rights and organizing the workers. Everyone is affected.
We of course we hope that you won't die a cruel death, Attorney Luke, of course. And Jean, in the UK, what is the perception of this of the young Filipinos? Do they believe it that extrajudicial killings is happening?
Well, I think there is a mixed reaction really, because unfortunately, a lot of the young people here are not very aware. So they obviously they don't read Philippine media. They see what's on Facebook, and of course they're into TikTok and all that. But we're still hoping that President Duterte will be prosecuted by the ICC. That would be one thing that
We
would
filed that. We
well
filed that case.
cheer us up. So yeah, I think people just know it happened, and we don't allow them to forget it. And let's hope it's not gonna continue under the presumptive president if he really sits in Malacanang.
So, yeah, thank you, Jean. Professor Sanchez reacted about the case. In connection with that, we
Yeah,
have
let me
filed
react
a
on
case
that,
against,
please.
organizations have filed a case against President Duterte and others in the ICC. But in November 18 of last year, a statement from International Court from prosecutor Karim Khan suspended the court's investigation into alleged crimes committed during the president's war on drugs by estimates of around 20,000 people or more since 2016, when President Rodrigo Duterte became president and launched an extensive, drug campaign against illegal drug use. According to the documents released by the ICC, Prosecutor Karim wrote that the Philippines had filed a deferral request on November 10. So, your thoughts on this, Professor Sanchez? What happens now?
Karapatan had filed that case. We were, especially from my part of Central Visayas, because most of the cases were from Negros, starting from the massive killings of 86 murdered victims from Negros Island. I was part of the documentation, and I pushed the cases, and I brought the documentation together with others who went to the ICC. Even if they had suspended it, it is the Philippine government who asked for a deferral. It is not the court itself who deferred for it. So the case goes on and will continue. It's just that they were waiting for the elections to take place. But now that they are in office, we're still pushing for the same thing. It doesn't mean that because the government deferred that one, the other party will not push through. It depends on us. So as the party who filed the complaint, as the complainants, that file or that crime is still active and it has to be resolved. And we will push on further for that. What the Duterte government is doing is capitalizing on the moral panics on drugs, the moral panics on terrorism, the labeling of activists as terrorists. That is what this government that is now sitting will also sustain. And we are sure of that. And the more they will push for that, and the more they will employ McCarthyism or red tagging or red baiting, the more they will kill people. There was carnage going on 6 years, and then pandemic went, and still it galvanized militarization in the country. And what do we expect with the daughter of Duterte and the son of Marcos? That is to cover up for the stealing, for the ill-gotten wealth, and to cover up for the killings. We'll expect that to happen. That's precisely why the opposition will say there's no honeymoon stage for them. And the contradiction will go on. The opposition will also go on.
Can I just add something to that, Maria?
Yes.
So previously, Duterte and his administration refused to acknowledge the authority of the ICC. But actually, by then writing to them, asking for, whatever they asked for, they inadvertently acknowledged that the ICC indeed has got jurisdiction over the Philippines, over what Duterte and his cohorts did to the country. So hopefully that is an indication that there is something hopefully will happen in the very near future, and we have to keep pushing that.
Now we have some of our viewers sent us questions. We'd like to show you some of them. Actually, there were a lot of questions, so we just chose a few. So this one is from Michelle Baldemeca Belen. We expect red tagging in the future. Is there a way to get ahead of that? Anong resources ng ordinaryong Pilipino pag naakusahan ng sedition? Attorney Luke on this. Thank you, Michelle.
We must remember that red tagging is not legally feasible, not legally defensible in court. So there will always be legal ways of questioning any harassment that goes into you being identified as an activist and then you're tagged as a terrorist or what. Harassment by the government will never be legally defensible. So there are legal remedies, yes. But if we really want solutions to that, then we must really have to build the resistance movement against this regime, and not only against this regime, against the system that fosters or nurtures that kind of a regime. So the most important thing right now that we must do is to build the resistance movement against Marcos and Duterte. Because if not, they will rule our land for decades to come and indefinitely. And we must build that resistance movement in order to prevent the turn towards barbarism that they represent.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next question. Thank you. So what is your prediction for the Marcos Duterte regime?
Yes, this question came from Irish Inoceto. Thank you, Irish, for the question.
So question, Professor Sanchez, what is your prediction for the Marcos Duterte regime? Do you have one?
First, I would like to start on the promises that the Marcos Duterte regime did on election. The issue of the 20 peso a kilo of rice, I'm sure that they will not be successful with that, considering that the neoliberal policies on no price controls, wage freeze, of course, they have implemented immediately the 33 peso wage increase, but that's too far from the inflation that the people experienced from excise taxes and the pandemic, where there was no price control, the removal of public subsidies, and the full implementation of the excise tax that has taken place. So I think you'll have layers and layers of inflationary rates that will come in. And another thing is the massive killings that will sustain, because the people will always go back to the streets. And even if they were saying there were 31 million, you cannot just juxtapose where's the soul of the 31 million. If you speak about the pink revolution and the massive number of people who went to the streets, you'll be looking about what does a multitude of 31 million people look like? And even in the overseas voting, there was a wishy-washy way of distributing the ballots. There were a lot of people who were disenfranchised in the Philippines and in the overseas. So how did they get the total number perfectly? 67 million voting, or a number of 31 million to generate for the other party and 15 million for the Robredo candidates or the opposition candidates. So if you look at the whole thing, nasaan po ang 31 million na masasabi mo multitude? We saw the multitude, that is the pink revolution. What is your juxtaposition of a multitude of 31 million? We cannot just imagine it. We cannot just guess it. What's the direct correspondence to reality? Maaari ba na lilituhin mo yung pag-iisip ng tao ng ganyan? That's political gaslighting, and we have to dig up these 31 million where they are. Let's face each other in the streets.
Understand. And being from the IT industry, both of us, this has been an amazing and the fastest election ever in the country, with an internet of so slow. Anyway, it rained and Attorney Luke wasn't able to come, guest last week, and yet your election was faster than the US. Yeah. So our third question, please. Okay, this is coming from April K, and her question is
Yes, the result of the past election demonstrates the perils of democracy amidst the rise of populism. How can we ensure the choice towards good governance without undermining representativeness?
Attorney Luke. Your thoughts on this?
Yes, we must. We must provide real solutions to poverty. Because if our masses do not no longer believe that poverty can be solved, and there are real and particular solutions to poverty, if they no longer believe in that, then they will fall for a Marcos and Duterte who will simply promise them quick fix and fantastical solutions to poverty. Meaning to say, if we want to create a movement in order to change our society so that uh, there will be no more danger of a Marcos Duterte to ever take power in our country, then we must, uh, merge whatever movement that we have to the struggles of our working masses, to the struggles for a against poverty. And if we don't have that, if we cannot merge the struggle for democracy and even historical truth, if we cannot merge the struggle for democracy and historical truth with the everyday struggles of the masses to solve, for example, the problem of contractualization, to solve the problem of low wages, for our farmers to solve the problem of impoverishment, for our urban poor to solve the problem of housing. If we cannot merge that, then we will always have a Marcos and a Duterte who can use all types of deceitful tactics, use their billions in order to take or get the support of the Filipino masses, bring them to their side against us who are fighting for a democratic type of a system in our country. And the only way for us to fight against the deceit of a Marcos and Duterte who peddle false illusions, who peddle falsehoods, the only way we could fight against that is for us to bring in the struggles of the Filipino masses, provide real solutions to poverty, and at the same time show to the Filipino masses that the way forward for us to solve poverty is actually for us to have a democratic society. If these two are not merged and if they are separate, then we cannot fight against Marcos.
Okay.
Thank you, Attorney Luke. And we have actually more questions here. And there's one from the Philippines, right?
Yes, we
Okay.
have one reaction here that I want to show.
Yeah.
Hello! Hi, ako ulit si Niel, Pilipino dito sa UK. Dito ako sa UK dahil ang aking asawa ay British. Hindi ko maintindihan itong mga to. Hindi ko mag-gets bakit mo pinipraise yung taong na to. Alam niyo ba, ang reason kung bakit kayo nandyan ay dahil sa tatay niya. Mga ungas. Google Labor Export Policy. Bye.
Okay.
Your reaction on this, Jean. You're from UK. And he was just there. No, he was in Australia. Was it Australia? I think that was Australia. So, Jean, what's your reaction on that?
Okay, I couldn't quite hear because I'm now on my mobile. But I think generally, if it's the BBM and Sarah people, doing that, then obviously that's understandable. But certainly from the side of the kakampings and those who understand what's going on, there is no praise. There is only criticism. And in fact, one thing which suddenly surfaced after the election is this dreaded word called PhilHealth. Now, this PhilHealth, the new law was introduced to charge every single Filipino, whether you're dual national, whether you're TNT, whether you're unemployed or not, you will be charged a premium anywhere around the world you live to contribute to the PhilHealth funds. This is not a small amount because you're talking about at least 400 pounds up to 1,000 or dollars, $400 to $1,000 a year per person, depending on how much people earn. And talking about the OFWs, especially in the Middle East, I mean, domestic workers earn $200, $300 a month. We'll wait and see how they react when they get hit by these PhilHealth fees, because it is a lot of money. And of course, very cleverly, Duterte suspended the implementation while waiting for the election, I guess. But now it's rearing its ugly head, and everyone will be hit by it. So I don't think there'll be any more praises when people start getting charged thousands, not just for themselves, but for their families, because every single one will be affected by it.
Neil was talking about how OFWs or overseas contract workers. I think it started during Marcos regime. Professor Phoebe Sanchez.
He was talking about the labor export policy.
Yeah, labor export policy.
It started. It's an economic policy pimping our laborers outside of the country to generate dollars, to generate funds. And then from this program, the government appears like a dumb government. It could not provide livelihood opportunities in the country, but push the people to apply abroad and look for works abroad. And then the problem of funding repatriation programs for Filipinos who are in distress, OFWs who are in distress are affected, especially during the pandemic. I saw that one because there are many Filipinos in Europe who had no jobs and they could not go back home, and they are also sick. There's no program, there's no support for the sick OFW, there's no support for OFWs in distress, and much more for those who are sea-based workers. They're suffering hard. And there are those also who are in the jails. So if you are in another country and you don't have a contract and you are a sans-papier or a non-documented person, that's quite heavy, a burden on you. So a lot of Filipinos are even depressed and sick, but there is no extension from the embassies, and the consulates have very ugly or very bad attitude. They just stare at you. Pag didilatan ka ng mata, parang hindi nila alam kung bakit nandoon ka. Anong uri mga Pilipino yan nandyan sa mga embahada natin? Kaya nga pinuprotesta talaga namin sa bayan, no? That's what we are doing with the Migrante International, that government should have support, especially that nagkaletse-letse ang mga buhay ng mga Pilipino na nandito sa labas nang dahil sa labor export policy na yan.
Yes. So Niel was just referring to the law that was created during the Marcos regime, and it's still happening now. This it has
Labor
gotten
export.
worse. Actually, more people are going out of the country to work instead of just producing better things in our country. So another question.
Yes, another
Mike?
question. 2 more to go. Are you interested in joining or running in Negros Protocol?
Oh, thank you, nervously, Attorney Luke. This is directed to
running for public position is running for public position. I think is the question means if I'm interested in running for any local position in Negros. You must understand that electoral politics is not the primary thing that we are for. That's just incidental for us to participate in elections in order for us to be able to intervene in the process so that our trapos will not go unchallenged. But even prior to even if there are no elections, we are already in the forefront of struggles for the interest of our Filipino masses. Therefore, if you ask me if I am interested in running at all, even in national or local positions, that's not the primary thing that we're interested in. We are interested in being able to fight for the betterment of our workers, of our urban poor, of our farmers, of our indigenous peoples. We are interested in building a better type of a society. And we are only going to run if it serves the struggles for the workers, if it serves the struggle of our Filipino masses. So my answer to the question is that it depends if the struggle for a better society calls for me running for a local or national position.
Okay. There's also a question sent by Mr. Jerson Corpus. What does CPP NPA represent in society, and should they continue to push their cause? Professor Sanchez?
Well, the exact opposite, the extreme opposite of governance today is a counter government to, I could say, that the existence of the Communist Party. There are only two political parties if you read Philippine society. The CPP, that's one political party, and the rest. The rest of the political parties are factions of the elite. Until such time, there is a party that will truly bring the voice of the masses and say that they will call for genuine agrarian reforms. They will call for a genuine redistribution, assets reforms and assets redistribution, and then they will transform the government where everybody can speak from below and not just rely on the electoral position. Then you can compete with the CPP-NPA, because so far it's still the Communist Party that's there on top of the extreme left, and who could be the exact opposite of what Duterte is doing. And probably in the years to come with Marcos and Duterte, there's just one exact opposite, and that is the Communist Party and the New People's Army. Because if you have, at this point, the state apparatus with the military bureaucracy, the Philippine National Police, the armed forces of the Philippines, the paramilitary groups that's funded by the 1033 program of the Operation Pacific Eagle of the State Department of the United States of America, the purely only Filipino masses who really established their own army, the ragtag army of the New People's Army, is the exact opposite of that one. So you have this immovable force on the other side and the immovable force on the other side, and that's the exact opposite. So it should be there so we can see what's in the extreme and we can find also what's the middle ground.
You have thoughts on this, Gene?
Well, actually, in the UK, there is a Communist Party which participates in elections, general elections, and local elections. And maybe that's something that the Communist Party in the Philippines should study. Maybe if they move away from, the violence that gets red tagged all the time, they could actually participate in society, much like in Europe, because there are other places in Europe, even in Russia, well, they have a Communist Party, and they're all part of the democratic process. And so if we can move to something like that, then maybe, all this violence will reduce, all this conflict will reduce, and we can address everything, all the problems of poverty and all that in the in the halls of Congress.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jean. And of course, we have so many questions, so we can only ask 3 more. And we're down to our last 3 questions.
Yes.
Mike, what's your first question?
The first question: what do you think of Mayor and now Vice President Sara Duterte?
Attorney Luke, what do you think of the current Vice President, Sara Duterte? It's S, right? Sara Duterte.
She's a dangerous person. Especially, she could play the part of supporting Bongbong Marcos, or she could play the part of being the so-called alternative to Bongbong Marcos. And so, she is a continuity of the type of trapo governance that we are rejecting. She's the continuity of the bloody type of elite rule that we should be alarmed about. So she is dangerous. And if we reject Bongbong Marcos for the reason that Bongbong Marcos represents the type of elite rule that can never be accepted, the type of elite rule that is plunderous, the type of elite rule that is murderous, the type of elite rule that has a tendency for authoritarian rule, then we must also reject Sara Duterte for the very same reasons. And as early as now, I will try to I am registering the fact that Sara Duterte is not an alternative to Marcos, and Sara Duterte must never be supported if she goes against Bongbong Marcos. And if we reject Bongbong Marcos, then we must reject the entire package of elite rule that they represent, and we must reject Sara Duterte for representing the same type of our danger to our democracy and to our society. And therefore, Sara Duterte must be seen as simply a continuity of Bongbong Marcos and a continuity of her father, Rodrigo Duterte.
Thank you, Attorney Luke. How about you, Jean? Your thoughts on Sara Duterte, our current Vice President? Jean, I think, is frozen. Professor Sanchez, your thoughts on Vice President Sara Duterte?
Sara Duterte is the mouthpiece of Duterte, sustained Duterte, and she benefited from her father, and she will sustain what her father did, and she will be answerable, or she will do everything to stop the cases against her father, that we had filed in court. So we prepare to confront her, and we prepare to protest against her in the position of the executive. These two are the mouthpieces of the ruling class of Philippine society today. So they are the enemies of the poor. They are the enemies of the struggling Filipino people. That's how we define them. They cannot be an alternative to each other. But they are the extreme opposite of what we long for and that democratic society that we want to fight for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Same question, Jean. What do you think of our Vice President, Sara Duterte?
Well, I mean, I don't know her personally. I only obviously know her from what goes on in the media. The thing that comes to mind always is the way she punched this was it policeman or something, and even that is already an indication of what she might do in power. So I know, is she the same as her father? Really?
Yes. Okay, so the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, you're saying?
Yeah, quite.
So next question, your second to the last question. What do you think of the dictator's son and now President Bongbong Marcos, Attorney Luke?
Well, as I said, he represents the worst type of elite governance. The type of elite governance that is murderous, plunderous, and has a tendency towards authoritarian rule. And I think, elite governance has reached a point wherein they can no longer, they no longer have any respect for any trappings of democracy. They'll just rule by force. They'll just rule by deceit. They'll just manufacture consent. And we have already the fact alone that Bongbong Marcos has taken power, it indicates that our elite and proper governance has reached its pinnacle, its utmost potential, and it must have nowhere else to go but down. Everyone must reject it. But again, there's still a danger because they could manufacture consent from among the Filipino masses. There's still a danger that they could be there indefinitely. So we are in a situation wherein elite and trapo governance is already rotten to its core, and it should be rejected, and yet the new cannot be born yet. The new type of system cannot be born yet, and it is our job to make the process of building the new to make it quicker. And their job, the job of a Marcos and Duterte tandem or axis of evil, their job is to delay that process. And the struggle goes on for us to build a new society.
Okay, same question. Jean, what do you think of our current president, President
Well,
Bongbong?
I mean, obviously, uh, when even in the early 90s, 1980s, we were doing the same things in the UK. We were campaigning against martial law and Ferdinand Marcos, and sadly, it looks like there is another struggle that we face, with Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte. Uh, Obviously, you know about his Oxford record. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, we're basically a laughing stock in the UK. Filipinos are funny people because how can Filipinos vote for someone who lied about something as basic as his qualifications? Someone who is supposed to have been already prosecuted for not paying money to the Philippine government. And honestly, I personally cannot tell them what the reason is. It's just that's it. That's the effect of what happened when Duterte came to power. So hard to answer.
Exactly. Professor Sanchez, are you having a headache now? Just thinking about the president.
Well, if you
Okay. So what do you think of the current president, Professor?
the current situation, the current president is an expression of the peak of the most decadent political structure and political culture of Philippine society. He is the expression of that decadence. You have a president who cannot articulate what should be the moral grounds for leadership. You are an administrator of ill-gotten wealth. You did not pay your taxes. You never graduated from any educational institution in the first place to speak of. And then you are running there and you will say, I don't want corruption. Nobody should sit in a public office who had graft and corruption, but look at yourself. You are the total expression of that decadence in Philippine political structure and political culture. Nobody would believe in elections anymore. That's good that nobody will believe in elections. So what should be the alternative if we will not go for elections? I mean, you are forcing the people now to think. And for me, that's a blessing in disguise that this person is sitting there so that everything will become ripe and everything will come into real fruition. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so final question, Attorney Luke. If you were offered a cabinet position in this administration, will you accept it?
I already answered that a lot of times. I will join the workers on the ground and will never join this corrupt and evil government. I will never allow myself to be used as a deodorant for this rotten regime, an evil regime. I'll join the workers on the ground to fight against that regime.
Thank you for continuing your fight, Attorney Luke.
Thank you.
We're really thankful and we admire you for your work. And of course, Professor Sanchez and Mr. Gene Alcantara, thank you for joining us today here on TalkAlley.
Yes.
And
Thank you for your time.
yes, we hope we hope the best for all of you. So thank you and continue your fights out there.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you,
Maria and
Attorney
Mike.
Thank
Luke.
you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Phoebe.
Gene.
Bye.
Bye.
So,
That was a very powerful conversation, Mike.
Yes, very
I am very
powerful and
impressed with the
intense.
thoughts of our guests today,
Yes.
especially, Attorney Lucas Spiritu. Thank you for coming. I'm really happy to have you in the show. And Jean, who was traveling, I really appreciate Jean as well. Thank you so much, Jean, for being on the show, and Professor Sanchez as well for taking a break and taking her time in educating the people who are here today. So, thank you. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat sa pagpatuloy sa inyong mga programa at pagtulong sa mga kapwa nating Pilipino, lalo-lalo na sa mga Pilipinong nasa laylayan. Maraming salamat po. And Mike, I hope you learned about a few, bits and pieces of history in the Philippines,
Yes.
up to the martial law. Actually, Germany and the Philippines has a lot of relations in terms of dictatorship, in terms of struggle. But the good thing about Germany is that they were able to educate the youth after it happened.
Yes,
It's
that's
being
true.
taught regularly as part of their subjects in schools. We can see that in the kids. So they are taught even in the kindergarten, the grade school, the struggles and the demons that happened during that era here in Germany. And they have learned from it. And there's so many monuments being built here. Every street corner has a plaque for remembrance of each person and families who died during that time. So I think those are the things. But in the Philippines, we also have those. We have those memorials. We have books as well. We have films created. I don't know anymore how they have forgotten.
Yes, I believe it's really as Professor Sanchez said, it's from the ground up, from education. And the Philippines now couldn't go in a worse.
We can't
case
afford
scenario.
to educate the people.
Yeah,
Okay.
with a son of a dictator.
Yeah, this is actually a very historical.
Yep.
Someone from someone who has a very long history of, corruption and history of dictatorship that ruled a country for how many years?
Long enough.
40, 30 years. I mean, that's just something. So anyway, thank you everyone for being with us today. And for those who have sent their questions, we're very sorry that we are not able to read all of them, but I hope you enjoyed and learned from our guests. And we hope to have you again on TalkAlley next Sunday with
Yes.
Also a vice presidency candidate during the Halalan 2022. So
Yes, thank you, listeners and viewers, for tuning in. It was a really powerful, eye-opening, intense.
Yeah, it was intense. Attorney Luke Espiritu was really intense. So yes. Yeah.
So then we wish you.
I'm crushing on Attorney Luke Espiritu. So
wish you a
said it out loud.
restful Sunday and a good start in the next working week. Keep spreading the love and fight against.
Yeah. So see you again next Sunday. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy your weekdays. Workday. We're back to work on Monday. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.